Hey, all you Glenview Gators, Mrs. Wanglin here with this week's lesson. This week we are going to be working on the target of I can add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators using equivalent fractions. We will be finding the LCD of our fractions before we do any adding or subtracting. If you need to review how to do that from last week, go ahead and pause this video and go watch Miss Staples' video again. Do a couple practice problems, make sure you have that skill down. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with this week's. This week, our practice problem is going to be 3/4 plus 2/6. Now, obviously, we don't have a common denominator yet. Remember, in our fraction, the denominator tells us how many pieces the whole thing is cut into. This denominator has been cut into 4. This one shows us our whole thing got cut into 6. They're not the same size. This one has 3 of the 4. This one has 2 of the 6. So we've got to make things equal before we add these two fractions. In order to do that, you need to get the LCD of those two denominators. So we are going to list the LCD of 4 and 6. So with that, we are going to go ahead and list the multiples. So we have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. I could keep going, but I think I have enough. Now, for 6, do the same thing. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. Sounds good. Now, I have told my students that usually within the first 5 multiples of each number, you could probably find the LCD. Now, if you notice, I actually see 2 common denominators. I see a 12 that they both share and a 24. Remember, when you add or subtract fractions, it's always best to use the smallest number possible for your denominator. So in this situation, we are going to use the 12. The 24 is an option, but it's not the least. So I want to use the 12. Okay? Now, we need to create equivalent fractions with that denominator of 12. Let's do that now. We now need to take our 3/4 and our 2/6 and change them into a fraction with 12. How are we going to do that? Well, let's ask ourselves, how can we take the number 4 and change it through multiplication into the number 12? Well, 4 times what number gives us 12? 3. Good. So I'm going to write that down. Now, many of you probably remember this. Whatever I do to my denominator, I have to do to my numerator. So if I multiply my 4 times 3, I have to multiply my numerator also by 3. I'm going to repeat that process for my 2/6. How am I going to take my 6 and change it into a 12? Well, 6 times what number gives us 12? 2. Great. Now I have to do that for that numerator. So this will be 2 times 2. Now I can fill in my missing numerators. 3 times 3, and then 2 times 2. I now have my equivalent fractions. So when I have my equivalent fractions, I can rewrite my original problem. Remember, my original problem was 3/4 plus 2/6. Can't add those together because they don't have that common denominator. But I can add 9/12 and 4/12. Let's do that. When I do that, you've got to remember, this is a place where some people might make a mistake, but when we're adding fractions, you only add the numerators after you've got that common denominator. I do not add my denominators, okay? So 9 plus 4 is 13. I keep it over that denominator of 12. Now, some of you are saying, but Mrs. Wanglin, that doesn't look right. My numerator is bigger than my denominator. So what is an option that we have learned? We can change it into a mixed number. I have 1 and 1, 12. So possible answers, you could write down 3 and 12, 13 twelfths, or 1 and 1/12. Okay? Now, for today's assignment, we have a slightly different setup that we've chosen to do for us teachers. So what we're going to do, we're going to have you do an assignment on a website called Edulastic. Now, I'm going to show you here in the next clip how to get onto Edulastic. It's not that hard. You're going to go through Google Classroom, just like you do for a Google form or Google slide presentation or anything like that, okay? So I'm going to switch videos here and show you exactly how to do that.